Good morning, everyone, on a long weekend day. Thank you very much for being here. So, the court, the Fifth Appellate Court or Circuit Court, said to FDA that FDA, have overstepped their authority because they are not physicians and their posts are something like that. They are medical advice. So this is an appeal. So what happened was Dr. Merrick, Dr. Apter, and Dr. Bowden had sued FDA for this campaign of "You're not a horse, you're not a cow." The district court turned that down or went against them, saying that FDA has sovereign immunity. The doctors then appealed, and here is the decision of appeal that came in yesterday, where the lawsuit is now allowed to continue. So let's look at this decision. So first, from the Associate Press, court revives doctor's lawsuit, saying FDA overstepped its authority with anti-ivermectin campaign. So they say that a federal appellate court Friday revived a lawsuit by three doctors who say that FDA overstepped its authority in campaign against treating COVID-19. Now, look at these sentences as well. Even in this piece, you would continue to see the color of the writer and the organization itself. Ivermectin is commonly used to treat parasites in livestock. It can also be prescribed for humans. So that structure itself is just so not medical. Why? Because maybe in the US we use ivermectin for worms, in humans less, but ivermectin is used abundantly worldwide and even in the US for skin conditions as well, as anti-inflammatory as well. So putting it this way is, again, they're coloring it. This is the result of that campaign you're seeing. So ivermectin is commonly used to treat parasites in livestock. It can also be prescribed for humans, and it has been championed by some conservatives as a treatment for COVID-19. So then the next thing they do is even in this, they grouped it. They said, if you are on the ivermectin side, you are a conservative. Actually, it is a doctor's prerogative in an off-label state to decide what drug to use. And it is a doctor's accountability as well. So it is not this way that some conservatives decided it. The FDA has not approved ivermectin as COVID-19 treatment. Studies have not shown its efficacy or effectiveness. So this is their color. The agency did not there being this Associate Press, not court or the doctors, the agency did not immediately respond to requests. Then they say, the ruling acknowledged FDA receiving reports of some people requiring hospitalizations after self-medicating with ivermectin intended for livestock. But the ruling said the campaign, which at times featured the slogan, "You're not a horse," too often left out that the drug is sometimes prescribed for humans. And again, I believe sometimes here may be added by the press here. The doctors can proceed with their lawsuit contending that the FDA's campaign exceeded the FDA's authority under federal law, the ruling said. FDA is not a physician. So I'm actually going to, let me show it to you, that I have the ruling here as well. So if you go to the end of the ruling, here it says this, what I was reading. FDA is not a physician. So FDA is not a physician. It has authority to inform, announce, and apprise, but not to endorse, denounce, or advise. Judge Don Willett wrote for a panel that also included Jennifer Walker Eldred and Edith Brown Clement. The doctors have plausibly alleged that FDA's posts fell on the wrong side of the line between telling about and telling to. What a beautiful sentence. So the judges are saying, well, telling about something is different and telling to is different. Doctors Robert L. Apter, Mary Telly Burton, and Paul E. Merrick filed the lawsuit last year. All three said their reputations were harmed by the FDA campaign. Burton lost admitting privileges at Texas hospital, the ruling noted. Merrick alleged he lost his position at a medical school and at a hospital for promoting the use of ivermectin. The lawsuit was dismissed in December by U.S. District Judge Jeffrey Vincent Brown, who ruled that the complaints didn't overcome the FDA's sovereign immunity, a concept that protects government entities from many civil lawsuits regarding their responsibilities. The appellate panel said that FDA's alleged overstepping of its authority opened the door for the lawsuit. So this is the uh, Associate Press. Here is the actual court decision. I want to make a couple of comments as well. I usually do not because, as much as we're talking about this, I am a medical doctor and I don't talk about the politics of things or how agencies are behaving. But I'm not licensed to practice here in the US. I never appeared for the examination, but I'm a medical doctor. Even I, for teaching medicine, received threats and received notices to say that we got a complaint that you're practicing medicine. And this, if you are doing without a license, will be a felony. Would these medical boards now send a note to FDA that you being FDA, were practicing medicine without a license? So a few comments from me, and then I want to look at some parts of this decision. So it was when FDA was doing it in the middle of the pandemic, it was extraordinary for me to observe how the FDA was offering advice and running campaigns and making fun of their own people and their own doctors. And internally, you would see the posts that are actually written here in the decision, and internally giggling, or in my opinion, giggling, becoming happy for these posts trending very high. This was in the middle of the pandemic. And people who were actually doctors were being punished by them, by other private organizations, which FDA simply called in the court hearing. By the way, all of those court hearing transcripts, I have read them out, and these links are in the description. In the court hearing, they simply said these third parties are sophisticated agencies and scientific. They can make their own decisions. We have nothing to do with that. They were doing this in the middle of the pandemic, an extraordinary time for majority of us in our lifetime. This is what FDA did. In a democratic society, I come from a country where democracy is not very well established and is not, I think there are some external forces as well that want to keep it that way. And then when I come to US and I'm an American, I appreciate the value system of this society. And in such system, especially this democracy system, in a democratic society, agencies like FDA saying we had the sovereign immunity should not behave like dictatorships. FDA was behaving like dictatorship. And they went to court and said, and they still might win. Appellate court has only allowed the lawsuit to continue. They have not said that the doctors they have not decided for the lawsuit itself. So the lawsuit still would proceed. We'll see what happens. but at least you see a color of FDA that we were all talking about it. And there were still two groups of people, one group saying FDA is doing right and the other one saying FDA is doing wrong. And the society was divided while FDA knew what they were doing. So I'm going to repeat this. In a democratic society, agencies should not behave like dictatorships. And then the campaign's effects. For example, this platform on which we are, YouTube, if you look at YouTube's medical misinformation and disinformation policy, they explicitly talk about you cannot talk about ivermectin being useful for COVID-19. I remember 59 of my videos where there were mentions of ivermectin and they talk about the mechanisms and stuff. They took them down in one day. These private agencies, we cannot do anything about them, private companies, because this is their policy, their own terms and conditions. They can decide that on our platform, you cannot talk about ivermectin for COVID, and we can't stop them. Courts cannot stop them. Agencies, in this case, in my opinion, FDA enabled this by their campaigns. So why and who were FDA to take away, as a doctor, I still remember we were all scared together. We were all nervous, terrified. People were dying in the beginning of the pandemic. And people were trying to find out whatever solution they can have. This could be a wrong solution or a right solution, but everybody was looking into those. And FDA comes in the middle of it. What was the option people had? The option people had was to sit at home, and if they become blue in the face, then they should go to a hospital where they may end up on a ventilator and may or may not come back. But before that, there is nothing, and let's wait for the vaccines. So if people had found ways to try to do something to feel in control, this discussion I don't even want to go for, is ivermectin effective or ivermectin not effective? That is not the question. The question is, was FDA allowed, or did they have the authority to do this or not? And if people were taking ivermectin, let's say that taking horse ivermectin was wrong. How did that happen? It was the FDA's campaign that scared doctors so much that doctor would not prescribe ivermectin, so people would go find alternatives. But if a doctor was prescribing ivermectin, then it is a doctor's responsibility and accountability to figure out what is the right thing to do. They're accountable for that. FDA is not. Is FDA accountable for any of the damage that may have been? So I want to, and there are, look, FDA vaccines, when the vaccines started, I remember Fauci saying that the vaccine efficacy will be 93%. Then it got adjusted down to 90%, then to 84%, then to 80%, then to 70%. Then they said bare minimum 66%, because the R naught said at least 66% of the people should be vaccinated to create herd immunity. Remember, 1/3. And then it went to 50%. Nowadays, the efficacy, the latest report that I read, they were talking about the vaccine efficacy against the current variant was 50% and 48% in two cases, two kind of scenarios. Then the vaccine efficacy is not longer lasting. Every 3-4 months, one has to go get a vaccine booster. Did FDA ever look into that? Not to say go ban the vaccine, but they should have looked into that. Instead of calling people horses and cows, they should have gone to look into that to say, What could be the reason that the vaccine isn't working correctly? What is the right design of the vaccine? What should have been happening? These vaccines companies have earned billions of dollars. They can do better research. Anyways, I want to share some notes. So this is the case 2240802 and date file 9/1/2023, United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, November 22. So I love the opening of it. So here it is the Robert L. Apter, Mary Talley Borden, and Paul E. Merrick versus Department of Health and Human Services, Xavier Breca, etc. So I love this. This is how they open their decision. You are not a horse. Or so the Food and Drug Administration alerted millions of Americans via social media midway through the COVID-19 pandemic. Judges caught this, that FDA was doing it in the middle of the pandemic. Instead of enabling the doctors to say, do the right thing, keep thinking, be doctors, be thinkers. This was a novel situation. You rise up to that requirement. And they should have even said, tell us what you're seeing. Maybe we can do more research in those areas. Instead of running campaigns, you're not a horse. In the middle of the pandemic. And then here, the doctors argue that FDA's horse message and similar public statements, together the posts, violate FDA's Enabling Act and the Administrative Procedure Act, or APA. The district court held the sovereign immunity protects the agencies and the officials, and it dismissed the suit. We disagree. First, the doctor can use the APA to bypass sovereign immunity and assert their ultra-vires claims against the agencies and the officials. FDA is not a physician. FDA is not a physician. I hope FDA finds that out now, that they are not a physician. And the physicians were receiving threats and notices and being removed from their jobs. And the one who was not a physician was running campaigns and making fun of people. So here they talk about Dr. Merrick lost his position at a medical school and at a hospital for promoting the use of ivermectin. So the doctors have requested the court that the FDA set the posts aside and declare them unlawful. The court declared that FDA cannot interfere with the practice of medicine, declared that FDA cannot issue statements or directives about how or whether health professionals should use ivermectin off-label to treat patients, and that such FDA actions have no legal effect and do not bind health professionals or patients, and to enjoin FDA from engaging in such actions. Sorry, morning time, coffee time as well. So we conclude that the first path is open. The doctors can use the APA to assert their ultra-vires claims against the defendants. FDA can inform, but it has identified no authority allowing it to recommend consumers stop taking medicines. Assuming without deciding that FDA is correct about that, the APA, the sovereign immunity, we conclude that doctors' ultra-vires claim has merit enough to overcome immunity under the common law and therefore under the APA as well. FDA cannot act without express statutory authority. FDA does not have express authority to recommend against off-label uses of drugs approved for human use. The posts recommended against ivermectin, therefore, the posts are beyond FDA's authority. We agree that at this stage, FDA has not offered even a colorable basis for rejecting this argument. The posts are beyond FDA's authority. Nothing in the Act's plain text, the Act which FDA is using to say this is our regulations, meaning this is what directs us and we have immunity under this Act. Nothing in the Act's plain text authorizes FDA to issue medical advice or recommendations. The doctors can therefore use the ultra-vires exception to sue the agency and the officials, even if FDA is correct that the heightened merits adjacent test for common law ultra-vires claims also applies to ultra-vires claims under the APA. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not doing a legal discussion. I'm just looking at what they're saying. The day after FDA issued the first horse message, FDA staffers noted that it was the most popular post we have ever had on Twitter, and that they were pleased with the response and the results. Staffers also described the post as part of a new recommended approach that comprised an ambitious effort to counter much of the vaccine misinformation or information out there. I know that there will be folks who will be adding comment, but ivermectin doesn't work or ivermectin works. This is not about ivermectin works or not works. It is about, can FDA provide advice? And after giving advice, can they just hide that under the guise of we have sovereign immunity? Remember, they said to court that you cannot police us, you cannot fact check us, whatever we say is science. And if the court said, what was your science? They said, we did not track our science. We are not convinced, as discussed above. Each of the posts containing imperative elements that go beyond mere factual communication. FDA also argues that the posts cannot be rules because they do not prescribe policy. Again, we disagree. The doctors argue that the FDA has created a legal standard that governing entities are regularly relying on to establish the appropriate medical care and dictate the practice of medicine, including by courts in legal proceedings. So this is the end of the decision. They say FDA is not a physician. It has authority to inform, announce, and apprise, but not to endorse, denounce, or advise. The doctors have plausibly alleged that FDA's posts fell on the wrong side of the line between telling about and telling to. They can tell about ivermectin. They cannot tell to the people not to use ivermectin. As such, the doctors can use the APA to assert their ultra-vires claims against the agencies and the officials. Even, this is beautiful, even tweet-sized doses of personalized medical advice are beyond FDA's statutory authority. We reverse the district court's judgment of dismissal and we remand for further proceedings. This is worth reading again. Even tweet-sized doses of personalized medical advice are beyond FDA's statutory authority. We reverse the district court's judgment of the dismissal and we remand for further proceedings. I have shown you in the past the letters from Blue Cross to doctors prescribing ivermectin. So you, the listener, if you judge, let's go with that for a second. Let's say you judge that the ivermectin is not effective. And so a doctor who's prescribing it is wrong. Even then, it still is doctor's responsibility and doctor's accountability. If you as a listener say ivermectin is good, doctors should prescribe it, even then It is doctors' responsibility and their accountability. That is where the intervention appeared. That is where the FDA overstepped their bounds. And the result of the campaign were that doctors were harassed, terrorized, their jobs taken, they lost their jobs, they lost their livelihood, their families were destroyed, their financials were destroyed. I have been part of this destruction. I am just very grateful that things are fine. But many people, many doctors paid a very heavy price to trying to jump up and trying to help. This was wrong, and then now the court says that at least their sovereign immunity does not stand. We'll see how the lawsuit proceeds and what does happen. It is possible that the doctors lose once again, or it is possible that they'll win. We'll find out. But these important statements at least provide you a color. Plus, remember, now doctors will do discovery because the lawsuit can continue. They'll find even more statements, in my opinion, and more emails and more internal giggling going on of their interventions, interference. So we'll see. Plus, I hope this would teach FDA a lesson to stay in their own lane. And with that, thank you very much for being with me over a weekend. I would see you next week. Bye for now. And in the description of this video, there are various links. You can get access to Drbeen. You can support this work. There are links for Buy Me a Coffee and PayPal and others. And there are links to those 3 transcripts as well from the court that I discussed. And please like, subscribe, and share. Talk to you next week. Bye for now.